So we just talked, and we talked about everything, about our childhoods, about life, about fast cars, because I wanted one. I couldn't afford it. He had a lot of fast cars. Motorcycles, because I rode a motorcycle also. And we talked about different motorcycles, and we talked about acting and life, and we had, strangely enough, me from nowhere and Steve McQueen had a lot in common.
Hi, I'm Rob Word. Welcome to A Word on Westerns, and we love Westerns and the leading ladies, and we have a leading lady today who's been nominated for 2 Emmy Awards. She looks lovely. She's going to come in here. Her hair, her coif is just right, and we want to give her a big hand. Lee Purcell, come on in.
Don't touch my hair.
So lovely.
Don't touch my hair.
Sounds like Madeline Kahn, not my hair. No.
I'm afraid it's going to start sticking up again.
Well, let's talk about your Westerns. And Stan Dragati,
Yes.
who was the director of Jack L. Warner's last feature film. This is a man whose career started in the silent days.
He was old to come out of retirement to produce Dirty Little Billy.
And Jack had already sold Warner Brothers at this time. This was a Columbia release.
Was it?
Yes.
I don't even remember.
Yes. No, but it was the last film he ever produced.
It was the last film he ever produced. So I got to know Jack Warner quite well, and he was a good mentor to me. And I remember when I went to, there was a big party at the Bistro, which was in LA at the time, was a very hot restaurant, big, everything happened there, right? And he supervised my hair, my makeup. He was old school. He was from that era, and what I was wearing.
So that film was way ahead of its time.
It was.
It was Deadwood before Deadwood. It was the muddy streets and the great costumes and the characters who were questionable. They weren't your typical Durango Kid, B-Western heroes.
No, there were no white hats.
They were all muddy. They might have been white to begin with.
Maybe.
Gentlemen!
It's a Dirty Little Billy. That's the film with Michael J. Pollard as Billy the Kid.
And Richard Evans as Goldie. And I played the 13-year-old prostitute, Burl.
How did you research that?
You're quick. You're so quick. Oh my God. Actually, if you really want to know how I researched.
Sure.
So Burl was a composite of several real women that had been in Billy's life, and she was an orphan who there was nothing else she could do but turn to prostitution, and at 13, that's what she did. So, how did I research it? There's a wonderful book on. I did a lot of different kinds of research, but remember at that time there was no internet. So it's called the library.
It's a Dewey Decimal System.
It was a place we used to go where there were actually books, and you would read, and then you would call people on the telephone, and you would find out things. And so there was a photographer. He was very famous back in the 1880s or 90s, I guess. And he did a book on Storyville. And Storyville was, I haven't thought about this in years. I still have the book. Storyville was, does anybody know where Storyville was? I can't, Kansas or, anyway, I did research on the prostitutes in Storyville, which was a real place. And this was a book of real photographs of women from that time period who were prostitutes. And it was the same time period as when Billy the Kid lived. And then also there were other photographs that I studied because there was no video of, from that period. There were other photographs I've studied of prostitutes from that era in New Orleans. So I kind of did a city study and a rural study.
What was your character's relationship with Billy the Kid?
Well, her relationship was really with two of them. There was a movie that starred three people, right?
Richard Evans.
Richard Evans
was Goldie.
He was Goldie. He passed away about 2 years ago. We remained friends all of our lives, and then Michael, and it was incredible character actors. It was Gary Busey's first film.
Nick Nolte's first film too, I think, wasn't it?
He wasn't in it, as far as I know. Who did he play?
Nick Nolte and Ed Lauter made their film debuts.
Well, Ed and Gary. I don't recall Nick Nolte being in it. Sorry, maybe
he probably had too much mud on his face, and you wouldn't recognize him.
I don't know, but I don't recall him being in it. But Gary was in it, in a very memorable scene. Ed Lauter was great in it, just great. There were just wonderful character actors.
I think I know who the mother was. She was in Ozana's Raid, Dran Hamilton.
Dran Hamilton.
Boy,
oh, I loved her.
What a fine actress.
She did a beautiful Irish accent because they were supposed to be immigrants, and as a lot of people were at that time, because Stan wanted it to be very historically accurate. And that's why we were all so dirty, was because it was hard to clean yourself in those days. And the streets were, mud.
The characterization that Stan gave Billy was almost like moronic. His character.
He wasn't a bright person, Billy the Kid. He wasn't. And that's the way Michael played everything. And Stan wanted that. He wanted Billy to not be, the hero or the anti-hero. He wanted him he wanted to see the beginning of how he became a killer.
It was certainly different from Paul Newman's Billy the Kid or Robert Taylor.
Oh, yeah. Everybody's.
Yeah. Or Clu Gulager.
Or Bob Dylan.
Bob Dylan was closer.
He was closer. But Stan really wanted him to be what his research had turned up that Billy the Kid actually was, which was he was not that bright.
Hold it!
My gun, you little...
Shoot him, Bill! Shoot it!
Shoot him, kid! Shoot him, kid!
Shoot him!
He ain't shooting nobody. He's scared.
The real Billy the Kid wasn't big or tough or brave. He was a punk.
He was abused. He was he was a fish out of water. He was a city kid that they had brought to the Old West. He had a mean stepfather. No excuse for what he did. But he wanted to depict him in the way that he thought he actually was. And I know that when Jack Warner saw the movie, and he was on set, I have great photographs of Jack being on set, and he was quite elderly at the time, but he had come out of retirement to do this movie. He had been retired for years, and his response was, too dark for the drive-ins.
He's probably right.
He was right. It wasn't.
No, it was ahead of its time.
It was way ahead of its time. Way ahead of it. And we were in Arizona for months.
Old Tucson and Mescal.
Yeah,
right?
and we were there for such a long time, and so everybody brought their families and their
So it must have had a
kids.
decent budget then. Jack Warner's last film, it wouldn't have been like
wasn't
this
a low-budget
minuscule
film, no.
budget.
No, it was a big movie.
Yeah.
So it was, I think, we used to arrive every morning and going to makeup to get the dirt put on. I'm not joking. And they would blacken my teeth and just put dirt on my face and grease in my hair. So
That prostitute's not going to make any money at all.
She didn't do too well. But the men were also very dirty, so cared.
So Jack Warner visiting the set on his last movie, you said you had a nice relationship with him. So
I did.
How did that develop? Why did he take you under his wing, sort of?
He liked me, and he could never remember my name, and he couldn't.
He was confusing you with that 13-year-old prostitute.
I don't think so. He was quite elderly, but he just liked me, and And because he was old school, he was used to, grooming female movie stars. And he would criticize. I was in his office one day and he said, he was this gruff old man. And he said, "Why are you dressed like a boy?" I said, and it was the style, right? Jeans and, a blue work shirt. That's how everybody dressed. And I said, "But why? This is how everybody dress. You should dress like a girl." And I thought, okay, well, he wanted me to wear frills and, lacy dresses. And it's like, that wasn't the style, but he was from another era.
Sure, the golden age of Hollywood.
The whole golden age of Hollywood. And he wanted me to look like one of his movie stars, right? But nobody did.
Well, your first film, you had a starring role with Michael Douglas in Adam at 6 a.m., which was a movie about, so typical of the era, where a guy wants to chuck it all and go live on the land. And so that's what he did, and he falls in love with you as he's working as a manual laborer.
It's definitely not a Western.
No, but it was produced by a guy associated with Westerns,
Yes,
Steve
it was.
McQueen.
Steve McQueen. It was for his company.
Yeah, Solar.
Yeah.
We just talked, I had a guest and we talked about Junior Bonner, which was a film he did right after this too.
Right.
Did you go on location at all when they were shooting that? Did you visit Prescott?
No, I was living in Europe. I didn't even live in this country. After that, I moved pretty quickly.
How did you first meet Steve?
Through a series of 5 very grueling auditions. I had, there was about 500 girls.
For Adam at 6 a.m.?
Yes, Michael had not been hired. And they were just looking for the girl. And I don't know why they did it in that order, because that isn't typical, but that's what Steve wanted to do. I'm not quite sure why. Never asked him. But so they had like a countrywide talent search, and looked at, auditioned 500 young actresses, and then they kept narrowing it down. So every time I would get another audition, it was like, thank you, because it was a culling process. It was like, which of the rabbits are you going to choose in the pet store? And so it got down. It kept going down, and then one day I got a call from the office, because I had been at the office so much over the period of months, and which is in Studio City. I always call it my lucky building, and it's now the Art Directors Guild, but it was Steve's office. And it was across from where Dupar's used to be, and now it's Sephora, and whatever. And so I got a call on a Saturday morning, and I was out gardening in my little plot, and they said, "Oh, can you come over to the office?" And it was like, I was dirty, I was sweaty, and I said, "Yeah, sure. Can I come over in about an hour?" They said, "No, you have to come now. In fact, you have to be here in 10 minutes. And I was like, well, I thought to myself, oh, they probably want me to pick up some more sides, right? Because they kept giving me different audition pieces, and I knew I had another audition coming up, number 3 or 4, I don't remember. And they said, yeah, just come over however you are. It doesn't matter. I thought, I'm just going to run her real fast. And I'm going to run up the stairs, and I'm going to pick the sides off the desk like I always do. And then I'm going to run out. Nobody will see me. It's great, And so I drove my old beater car over there and got there, and then, ran up the stairs and opened the door, and there was Steve McQueen. And it was like, oh, crap. And he was standing there at the top of the stairs, and he said, hi, I'm Steve. And I said, I know. And Lee, and he said, yeah, well, let's talk. So that was how we met. And we went back to his office, and we talked for like 3 hours. And it was great. It was great. And remember, I thought he was old. He was probably 40. And he was of my parents' generation. And I hadn't seen that many of his movies.
Had you not seen Wanted Dead or Alive?
No. No, I had seen Bullet, and that was it.
That's a good one to see, though.
Oh, it's a good one. Still is.
Yeah.
But he was the biggest movie star in the world at that time. And so we just talked. And we talked about everything. About our childhoods, about life, about fast cars, because I wanted one. I couldn't afford it. He had a lot of fast cars. Motorcycles, because I rode a motorcycle also. And we talked about different motorcycles, and we talked about acting and life, and we had, strangely enough, me from nowhere and Steve McQueen had a lot in common. And it was very interesting. And so I left and, went and did my next audition, which I don't even remember.
Did you clean up and change clothes?
No. What I did do was went home and I took a pair of scissors and I cut bangs, just chopped them right off. And because I thought it was a good idea. And I had really long blonde hair at the time, right? And it was straight and parted in the middle like everybody's was at that time period. And I just cut off the bangs. Then we had the final screen test, which was done at Disney Ranch. And there were 5 of us jammed into the car. They took all the actresses out at the same time in a car. And well, one of them was a friend of mine. And it was very odd and very awkward. And, but we made it through. And then there were no dressing rooms. We were sitting on a log, in between scenes. You would do your turn and then you go sit on a log. So, and it was not a low budget movie, but I guess the auditions were really low budget. So, and then I got the call that I got the job. I don't know who called, my agent, I guess. I actually didn't have an agent. I didn't have a theatrical agent. I had a commercial agent. That's a whole other story. And then the next call was Steve. And that's when he started mentoring me. And
mentoring, how did he do that?
Oh, I would go to his office. We would have long discussions. We would work out because he thought I was very skinny at the time and he wanted me to gain weight, but he didn't want me to gain it in the wrong way. He wanted me to gain muscle. And so he would teach me exercises. And so I would be working out with Steve McQueen in his office. It's like so strange, surreal. And I never asked him, how do you know all this? Because he was fit, very fit. And I finally, towards the end, I did say to him, every time I come here, you show me a different exercise. How do you know all these exercises? And he said, there's this really great Chinese martial arts guy. And he helps me keep in shape. So then years later, because I'm in a lot of books about Steve, and this interviewer I was telling him this story, and he said, do you know who that was? The Chinese martial arts guy? I said, no. And he said, it was Bruce Lee. And it was like, oh my gosh, I guess I was trained by Bruce Lee through osmosis, one removed.
After Adam at 6 a.m. that you did for Steve's company, and he was a silent producer, it was his company, but he didn't get a credit on screen.
No, he didn't want one.
But how hands-on was he?
He was very hands-on. He was, yeah. I mean, we were shooting in Missouri and he was in L.A., but all the dailies were flown out to him. He would give his comments and then we would be told, the comments. And so he was long-distance hands-on.
After Adam at 6 a.m., you did a Bonanza episode with Richard Thomas, too, an early Bonanza episode.
Yes, that's right.
Too. And it's a kind of a romantic
well, he was accused of raping me, I guess, if you call that.
Really? Okay, I didn't see that one.
Yeah, I don't think it's...
Your prostitution role,
got reversed.
A premonition of that coming up, right?
No. Yeah, I didn't realize that was after I did Adam. I thought it was a few years later.
Well, according to IMDb, and we don't know how accurate that is a lot of the time, but it's the source to go to.
Okay.
And it had the weirdest title, The Weary Willies.
I'll tell you what that was.
Okay.
Because I actually know. That was what because Richard, who is still a very good friend of mine, Richard played a Civil War veteran who was kind of lost. And there was the name for these types of men at the time was the Weary Willies.
The post-Civil War veterans.
Post-Civil War veterans. They were young men. They were, a lot of them ended up doing cattle drives and having, proper professions. But a lot of them they were obviously
vagabonds.
They were vagabonds, and obviously they had some form of, PTSD. And I mean, there's been no worse war than that war. And wandered the country, just wandered and dressed up in their old beat up uniforms. So Richard played one of them, and I was the young girl, and what was his name? Played my father.
Lonnie Chapman.
Yeah, Lonnie Chapman.
What a fine actor.
What a fine actor. And there's a theater here named, after Lonnie. Well, the Lonnie Chapman Theater's over in the valley, Burbank or someplace. And it was great but I always laugh at it because when Richard and I always laugh about this because Richard was wearing a platinum blonde wig and we don't know why. And I had my bleach blonde long hair and my double false eyelashes. It was so accurate, they were really...
It was bonanza.
I know, they were really into accuracy.
Now, did like Michael Landon and Dan Blocker, were they involved in this storyline that you had scenes with them?
I don't remember. I remember Michael, working with Michael, and I remember working with the dad.
Lauren Green.
Thank you. Sorry, guys. Lauren Green. I remember working with Lauren Green. I think Dan may have been ill because I'm not sure he was in the episode. I think this was...
Well, this was the 12th season, and it ran for another full season and then a half season when he died.
Okay.
So he might have been...
I think he was already ill, but I'm not entirely sure. But I don't remember him being around.
Another Western you did, which spawned a series of wonderful movies, the terrific film based on a song written by Kenny Rogers.
Yes.
The script was written by Jim Burns and somebody else, but Bruce Boxleitner's in that too.
Who's here?
Oh boy.
Where's Bruce?
Oh, I'm sorry. Wake up. Somebody wake Boxleitner up.
Wake up.
Oh, shucks.
You're not that old.
Yeah. That was kind of exciting to be in that major hit, too. What did you think when they said, well, it's a movie based on this song?
I thought it was the oddest thing I'd ever heard of. But that had happened before in film history. And that's not the first time that's ever happened. So I was a big fan of Kenny's already. And but I hadn't, of course, met him and there was no audition or anything. But I was graced because I got to meet my good friend Bruce Boxleitner. And we have had a very long history since then of different things. We rodeoed together for several years on the Ben Johnson Pro Celebrity Rodeo circuit. And we also had a cowboy poetry and music, the Green River Roping and Reciting Preservation Society players try to say that in one breath.
The Gambler took you back to Old Tucson and Mescal.
It did. I've spent a lot of time in Old Tucson. Yeah. It was great. It was fun. It was a really fun time. I got to teach Kenny how to read a script.
Oh, right. He had not acted.
No, he didn't know how to read a script. So one day he came to me and he said, can I talk to you for a minute? I'm like, oh, sure, And he said, and he had his script with him. So I just want to ask you a few questions. And I said, sure. I mean, this is the nicest guy in the world. And he said, so, what of these lines do I say? Because he had never read a script, remember? And I said, well, you say wherever it says, what was his name, Brady? Brady. I said, where it says Brady, don't say Brady, but where below Brady, say the line below Brady. And he was like, oh, okay. I said, but don't say Brady walks out the door.
These are good tips.
This is acting 101, right? And so I went through the whole script with him and showed him where he spoke, you know, in dialogue, and he's quick. Oh, he's quick, you know. And then I asked him a question. I said, so he said, do I have to memorize this? These lines of dialogue? And I said, yeah, you do. I said, but remember, you know what, 500 songs by heart? This will be nothing for you. And it was nothing for him. Once he knew what to say, and then he just picked it up.
It's a charming movie. It's so much fun. And then the ratings were so high.
Yeah, they were so high.
They ended up making several more
They
of them.
did, yeah,
but,
without me.
What fun. Did your character die in that? I don't remember.
I don't know what happened to her. But well, actually, I got pregnant. I had a baby and in life. And so that kind of was that, you know. And but the really fun part to me was I got to learn card tricks. And you don't really see many of them in the film, which is too bad. But Steve Stevens, remember Steve Stevens? So he was hired by, I think he was a friend of Jim Burns, and I'm actually Facebook friends with Jim Burns and his wife. And he taught me card tricks because she was supposed to be this female card shark. And although I don't think you really got that much from the movie, but so I learned how to do all the spreads and shuffle one hand and tricks, and that was really great. I love that part.
What was it like working with Bruce Boxleitner?
Let me tell you some gossip about Bruce Boxleitner.
We want to hear.
I don't know that you want to hear this. It's pretty shocking. He's like the nicest guy in the world.
Oh, wow.
I'm sorry.
Well, okay, we don't want to embarrass him too much. Well, maybe a little.
A little. I don't mind embarrassing Bruce. I've spent years embarrassing Bruce.
Well, that was a fun movie, and you did another one with a fabulous cast. Kid Blue, with Dennis Hopper and Ben Johnson, Warren Oates, and probably a couple of other people I can't remember.
Oh, like Ralph Waite.
Ralph Waite, yes.
Howard Hesseman.
Howard Hesseman, really.
Janice Rule. That was a tremendous, I mean, that's really an amazing cast. And that was for 20th Century Fox. And I played the femme, you know, the young wife of Warren, and then the lover of Dennis.
Well, we ain't decent.
I should say you're not.
And his lovely wife, Molly.
Don't you be funning around with me now.
Why do you always think I'm funny?
Yeah, people get killed in these kind of nights.
If you were Kid Blue, what would you do?
And I remember being over at 20th, and I had auditioned for it. And the director, we were standing out on that street there in the New York set, and the director said, "Great job, but you know you're far too young for this." And I literally stood in the middle of the street and begged for the role.
Well, I'm glad you got it.
And I did. Yeah, and he was like, "Really? You think you can do old enough?" And I went, "Yeah, I think I can do that. I can do that." And so I got the role. And then we took off for, again, I was living in London. And so I had flown back here to audition for that and a few other things. And then went back to London. And when I got to London, got a call. There's no internet. I got a call. You got the role, and you have to be in Durango in like, I don't know, it was like a week. So I had to fly back, you know, and then it was very difficult in those days to get to Durango from London. It was very difficult.
Probably still is.
It probably is difficult to get to Durango from anywhere, probably. So we spent about 3 months there.
Well, Dennis had already made a huge name for himself with Easy Rider and a long, interesting acting career.
Yes, very.
So as he was hired as an actor in this, did he have much input in the style and the look of the film?
he had a lot to say.
Like what?
Just, he had a lot to say. He wanted it to be accurate. That's what he wanted.
Right, it's a fun film.
It's a fun film. It is a fun film, but the cast is so good. And that was where I met Ben Johnson, whom I ended up rodeoing with Bruce for, years later. And that was really fun.
Now wait, man! Wait!
He was one step ahead of the posse and 100 years ahead of his time.
Really, it was just a fun, wonderful cast. I love Warren, love Dennis, love Ben, love Janice. They were all, I'm sad they're all
With
gone.
Warren, you're playing his wife in this, and everybody talks about what a wonderful guy he was. What was he like off set?
Oh, he was the best. He was just such a kind-hearted person. Brilliant, brilliant actor. I still have a shirt that he bought me all those years ago. Sometimes I wear it. It's like a Mexican shirt. And then one day he came to me and he said, "You have the worst looking script binder I've ever seen." Because I used the same script binder on everything I'd done. And it was just falling apart, right? And I said, "Well, I don't think it's so bad." And he said, "I do, and here's your new one." So then he took my script, took it apart, and put it in the new script binder. And it's probably still in that same binder.
Nice.
Yeah, he was a really good person who
The camera sure loved him. And I know you're doing radio recreations, and you played Miss Kitty in a Gunsmoke.
I did. Yeah.
How did that come about?
Kind of interesting. My partner, Michael Carnegie, my producing partner, and I, we have a production company called Two Fat Dogs Entertainment. Because
Do you have two fat dogs?
Well, he has one and I have the other. And we were searching for a name, and it was like, hey, you got a fat dog, I got a fat dog.
Two Fat Dogs.
Two Fat Dogs Entertainment, right? So we, it started during the pandemic because nobody could work. And we were doing recreations of classic radio plays from the golden age of radio, which we are obsessed with. And we started doing these plays, and we have them posted. People can see it on our YouTube channel, Hollywood Radio Players, or they can go to our website, HollywoodRadioPlayers.com. And we have done 2 Westerns.
What was the other?
The Bad Man, which I am not in. I just produced it with Michael, and because we produce all of them together. And we have a great group of people to draw from. And one is, so yeah, we did Gunsmoke, and Michael played Marshall Dillon, and I played Miss Kitty. That was so much fun.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, we had such a good
Well,
time.
the people who did those old radio shows at the time loved them.
Oh,
And
yeah.
they just, because you could wear that funny outfit that you wore for to meet Steve McQueen. You could wear that on radio, and it would be okay.
Except for our show is on Zoom, and
Oh,
we
so
call
you
it Radio You Can See.
Ah,
So you do see, but you see everybody in like a medium
sure,
shot.
sure.
Right. So, and we have a great costumer, Sean LeBlanc.
So you dress for the Zooms.
Oh, no, we do special effects, sound effects, music.
I'll have to watch
So it's
that.
very elaborate, and I would love it if everybody would watch it, please.
Watch it, and let's all watch more Westerns, too.
Yes, but
right.
also one more little plug
Okay.
is that our shows, Hollywood Radio Players, a.k.a. Fat Dogs, benefit the Motion Picture and Television Fund.
Terrific.
So all proceeds go to them.
Nice.
Thank you.
Well, let's have a big hand for Lee.
Thank you. Thank you very
Thank you.
much.
Thank you for coming.
Thanks. It was fun.